Okay, welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a pre-recorded video, and we're going to try another piece of the uncoated matte cardstock. And I tried to do this a back to basics, really just super basic colored pencil piece this last Friday, and I just couldn't do it. I added in the kitchen sink on that one. So this one, I want to go truly, with a simplified application of these stamps in nature set number 8. Okay. And that is based around the Lakeside Cove Large. I've colored this in. I'm going to have this a little bit high on this composition, so I don't have this lower portion inked up, but you can also wipe it off a little bit like so. Dab it off, whatever. And let's stamp this out. Let's get a good amount of leverage. Let's go about midway up the card. Get a good amount of leverage and pressure over the entire stamp. Okay, and I'm just stamping this out in dye-based ink. You can also use your StazOn, any color. Anything's going to work with colored pencils, okay? All right, so there we go with our impression, okay? Now, let's do something a little bit different with our cloud, all right? I could stamp in the foreground here right now or later, but what I think I'm going to do is use my cloud cumulus. I have my arrow pointed in the direction of my lighting. I recommend that's what you do on your cloud. And let's go with a medium tone blue here. You can go with a darker blue. Something like this would be really, really pale. I don't know if we'll be able to see that one. So kind of a medium. Okay, now every time you re-ink or ink up this cloud stamp for this purpose of how I'm using it in this card, wipe off this top portion, okay? Really good. And then wipe off the side. Wipe off more of the top portion there, like dab it off or whatever. I'm going about, let's see, let me see if I can show you this, how this cloud is, okay? So this is what this cloud is right here, okay? I'm wiping off this portion right here, this dark portion. So it's going to be the opposite, remember? You can kind of see it if you hold this up in the light. You can see where those billows are, and then where this empty negative space is right here where it gets darker, okay? And then that's why, because I'm going to be doing it like this, okay? I'm going to be stamping this upward like that, so the arrow is pointing directly up like that, okay? Now, every time I re-ink this, okay, I'm going to wipe off that certain portion again. So remember, get that arrow pointed up. But now my lighting is going to be coming from in the center here. So I have that arrow. Can you see that arrow through my, you're looking at it through my gummed up tack and peel here. But let's see if we get the angle here. Do you see how that is kind of, I stamped it like this, then I stamped it like this. Here, I'll show you with the wood mounted stamp like that. And then the second one is like that. And then what I'm going to keep doing is I'm going to keep, doing it in a circular fashion like this. And then we're going to leave a little bit of space in between. And that's going to be our space for our lighting coming through the clouds into our scene. So in a sense, you're kind of creating a source of light here, okay? The second one was about like this. I'd say it's roughly 45 degrees, and I'm kind of going into the previous impression by about 1 inch, okay? Now there's a lot of leeway. It's not like, oh my God, I was off a 1/16 of an inch or something like that, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. It's not gonna matter, okay? You don't need to worry about that. There's like 1 inch leeway, all right? You just don't want to fill this whole area in, okay? You want to leave a little bit of a gap, okay? Ink up, wipe off, stamp, okay? Go about like this. No, not everything is, don't measure it out, like, okay, let me see, that was 45. Oh my gosh, I, did it 42 degrees or 40 degrees, 35, you know what I mean? You can be off many degrees. Okay. And I just have this small portion. Do you see how this is looking right now? And do you see, this is the portion right here where we've wiped it off quite a bit. So it looks like it's lighter in this area and it gets darker out here because we've wiped it from here. And then over here it's juicier, so it's dark to light. Okay, so it's always going dark to light, dark to light, dark to light, etc. Okay, and we'll come in here, and now we're overlapping that cloud and that one. And you see my arrow is pointing in like that, like so. And we have our opening in the sky. You see, most of the times people don't wipe it off enough with each impression in here. Wipe it off pretty good with a dry paper towel, napkin, whatever you're using. Okay, so now what would be interesting is if I put some clouds down here as a reflection. I mean, you can do that, but I think I'm just going to leave it as is. I'll just have some water down here, okay? But the reflections are really cool. I'm not just doing this because I like always do reflections, and I want to kind of do a little bit of a comparison contrast with this previous scene that I did using the alcohol inks. All right, now let me see if this stamp of mine, my stamp was a little bit compressed here. If you watch my previous video, you'll see how I use this texture stamp. This is the Water Pattern Small. You can stamp it out in black down here. It looks a little bit kind of more stormy looking, okay? But I'm going to do it in the colors that are in my sky because water tends to be like a mirror for the sky area, okay? So this one's going to be used in much more of a textural type of approach, okay? And you can stamp it out like, something to be fully, made an impression from, okay? But I'm going to use it more. Okay, this thing is really flattened out. Okay, now watch this. These are darker on the perimeter like that, but then what you do is you go with your secondary impressions or third impressions even. And this is lighter in here, so it's going from darker to lighter like that. Got a little dark here, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do multiple impressions out here, okay? Okay, and don't worry, I'm going into my rock a little bit too. No big deal. Do you see what's happening now that we have this light coming in here like that? You can also use it like this, at a little bit of an angle like that, to get a smaller application, okay? So I'll go like this. Just to kind of create these kind of horizontal, striations going across like so. Now don't angle this, don't stamp it out like this, okay? Always kind of have this one going horizontal like this. But look at this, we almost don't have to do very much toning down here because we've already got a lot of it with our Water Pattern Small. Okay, now, I was just debating on whether or not to do my foreground now or later. Not at all. I mean, either way. Okay. Here's our Pines and Rocks. I was thinking about the Stays On. Let's just go with the dye-based ink. Either one, though, okay? Now, I won't be using too much of this because, this is just a quarter-page card, so I'm going to have this going down a bit. And we'll have it off to the side, okay? Now, I inked up more than what I thought I'd be using, but I didn't know how much of it I was going to be using, so it's just ink. Okay, so we have these trees over here. So I just used kind of a little bit like right here. It's like, I don't know if it's even 25%. And now what I'll use is the other side of this Pines and Rocks, probably something like this portion right here. Stand up if you need to, get a little bit of leverage going, okay? And then we have our two close by trees flanking our, whatever entry point into the Lakeside Cove, the main scene. As I said before all the time, this could be the main scene too. You can have two of these going across right here. It could be the background. In this case, it's the foreground because we've used it in conjunction with the Lakeside Cove. All right, let's get a little bit more depth in the scene. How about some deciduous trees, just kind of hanging from above. Large stamp, small usage. I'll probably just ink up this portion of it right here, okay? The oak branch has been designed to be used, in partial, in whole if you want to, but there's lighter kind of foliage over here, and it's a little bit denser over here, so it depends on what you're going for. If you just want to have a little bit of something, you don't want to fill it up too much, with a bolder area of the design, then just use, this portion over here and stamp it like that, okay? But I will just use the same size side, and we'll go like this. I don't want to cover over my opening in my sky too much. I mean, you could for kind of dramatic effect, but it looks like that. All right, so we have a lot of lighting already kind of working in here, don't we? We've done it with a couple easy techniques. One of the techniques is wiping off of stamps that stamps out darker to lighter up here because it's wetter to dry. And we've also used our texture stamp right here, and we've gone from kind of a dense application of it over here with several impressions to a much lighter impression and less impressions in the center. Light to darker like that. That area is reflecting right there. All right, so that is just the stamping portion of it. Now let's go in and let's embellish this. This is going to be done with a it's not going to have too many different colors in here. Let's bring out a pink just for some kicks. And I don't know if I have too much of a gray Prismacolor pencil. If I don't find one, what I'm going to do is I'll just use some alcohol pens in here or something like that. Okay, so I start working from light to dark. So, this is, and you say, hey, where are you going to use the blue tones? Well, the blue tones, I'm going to embellish my blue areas, sky and water here with my blue tones, okay? This is a little bit of this is like a different hue. It's like a gray blue, okay? But it's basically going from light, darker, darkest, okay? We go all the way to black. This one's black right here, okay? So let's just start off with the lightest one. Let me see, I'm looking over at my set. I always have my colored pencils ready to go. This one's a little bit lighter. So I'm going to use this, and what I'll start doing is I'll start filling in my shadow areas, okay? Now, one of the biggest kind of inclinations, okay, from those that have done coloring. A lot of people have done a lot of coloring, okay? But oftentimes what they're thinking about is, this is water down here, so this is all blue, so I'm going to fill this all in with blue. If we did that, we're going to lose our lighting, though, right? So what I'm doing is I'm kind of, I'm using blue in here, of course. But what I'm also doing, though, is I'm adding it in kind of the darker areas. And then when I come into the lighter areas, I'll just add a little bit. But with my darker tones, I won't really come in here too much. If I do, it'll just be a real light application. But this is just going to give us a little bit more, it'll give our imagery and lighting some more body to it. It'll fill it out a little bit more fully. So, in other words, I'm just kind of making the perimeter a little bit darker. And this is the same technique that you can do with any media that you're working with. This one's the alcohol inks. Notice how it's darker out here, lighter in the middle. Okay. That works as a nice framing convention, having things darker in the perimeter, putting a vignette around things. Okay. Do these little streaks across the water. Do them really lightly at first where you can barely see them, okay? I'm using a very light touch. See these areas where in the clouds where they're a little bit darker like that? You can add a little bit more tone like that in there. You know, I'm someone that I use a lot of different media, and it tends to keep building and building because I like different textures, okay? I do visual things, but I'm kind of someone that's kind of more kinesthetic. I like touch, okay? And I like the different textures that you can get with different media. Alcohol pens, you know, dye-based inks, watercolor pencils now, acrylic paint pens definitely, you know, pigment inks, white pigment ink or something like that to finish the scene off. But that being said, there's something kind of charming about just, you know, working in kind of a limited range of media like this. Like, this is really kind of fun here in its simplicity. Simplicity doesn't have to mean, you know, any less kind of dynamic. It's hard to beat a kind of a rainbow, you know, fluorescent paper or something like that, you know. But you know, this is not going to get, you know, achieve, you know, that amount of kind of eye-catching, you know, drama as something like this. But this has this own quality to it. Like it's just kind of, I don't know, oh, I don't know, yeah, I guess charming or something like that. Okay. It's kind of, I don't know, I'm finding the process really fun. I don't know if I'd want to do my next 20 cards like this, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, so this is a little bit grayish blue. I'll put some of these on my rocks, and I'm leaving the tops of my rocks light so that it looks like it's reflecting the light. I'm leaving some areas in my water lighter than other areas, so it looks like it's, you know, light is reflecting off the surface of the paper. I did that one a little bit crooked. I need to slow down a little bit, maybe. Okay, a little bit of darker blue. When you start moving up into your darker tones, kind of become a little bit more focused in your shadow areas, okay? And just still do it with a very light application, okay? You don't have to go like this, okay, on here, so. So this right here, I'm coloring around on my clouds, but the darker I go, kind of, I don't do as much coverage in here because I want to leave this nice and light. Oftentimes, in areas of color, as I've mentioned before, sometimes the brightest colors are in the shadows. Remember, brightest is not the same thing as lightest. Sometimes those get confused. Bright is the relative intensity of a color, so like this would be considered a fairly bright blue, but like a pastel blue where it would be really, really faint, that would be a dull blue. It would be a lighter blue. But not more intense, not brighter. Okay, see that right there? Working our shadows. It kind of puts the Lakeside Cove into the scene, set into the scene a little bit more when you anchor it with shadows. This is a pretty dark value of blue, so it'll stay kind of in the corners a little bit more so. This goes pretty fast, doesn't it? A lot of us have colored pencils, even if it's a small set, okay? Try to go light, medium, dark. And, you know, I mean, you should be able to get a full thing. Because I'm not even using each one of these pencils to its full kind of capabilities because I'm not really ever using it like that dark. So like even I was using this one kind of like this. Okay, but you can get much darker, you know, just with that one pencil, okay? So don't worry about having like, okay, I need 5 or something. I just grab those, okay? But if I had 3, I would have used 3. If I had 2, I'd use 2. Or, I don't know, use some of your other things. Don't have colored pencils? Try your watercolor crayons or pencils, you know, try something else like that in its place. Try to go multimedia, maybe. Okay, so those are my blues. Here's black. And the black is, you know, it's going to be one of the darker hues, so I'm really going to stay much more in the shadows here, just on the water's edge. Maybe a little down here in each corner. This is my first colored pencils on an uncoated matte cardstock. Pretty nice. I've always known that I can layer more on a matte paper that's not coated because it's more textured. You know, this paper is more textured, so, you know, it'd be able to stand more media before it just kind of gets super saturated and you can't really add any more on there. Okay, so we have all blue tones in here, right? So let's go and just add a tinge of, you know, another color. I've shown this on my photo stamping piece. Or no, it was, yeah, photo stamping in vellum. We can just go and add a little tinge of another hue. A beige warm tone would look kind of nice here as well. Okay, but I say I'm not coloring in all of my clouds. I want to leave some of it lighter, like it's reflecting some of that light from our light source. But you see that little tinge of pink up there? You see it's different down here. But since water is kind of reflective of the things that are going on in the sky, let's add a little bit of this down into our water like so. So you get a little of that tinge of pink. And where pink overlaps blue, looks a little bit more violet. Here's another kind of more, yeah, I don't know, a little bit of a less warm pink. Use a little bit of this. I'm just barely touching my paper, so I'm just kind of adding a little hint of it. Okay, and we'll do some of it down here as well. All right, so yeah, you can see it a little bit more. And all right, I'm going to use some Brilliance ink in here. Any kind of white pigment ink, okay? It doesn't have to be Brilliance. But cotton ball, okay? No, that's not my cotton one. Here's my C for cotton on my Brilliance. These two pads are the same. That one's to make impressions from. This one, I don't care if a bunch of like little cottony fibers get on the surface because I'm always just using it for this type of application. Okay, so this already looks very soft and airy and illuminated because I've retained a lot of the white of the paper in here. But let's see if we can make it look a little bit softer, you know, in terms of our lighting. So I'm adding this in the lighter areas first, okay? Let's just leave this open. And this is really light in here, so even if you have a brand new pad and you go in here, you're going to be saying, oh wait, nothing's applying. And then you're going to go down here and it's like way too wet, but don't do that. Just kind of develop it and then see what this is doing, okay? It doesn't make a big, huge change, you know, right off the bat. What you have to do is you have to kind of build it up a little bit like this. What's happening on my trees, it's making it a little bit lighter. See, that's black and that's with some of this over, it looks like light is hitting the top of the tree, right? Watch these trees right here now, okay? Doesn't that little bit of pigment ink over the top of them push them back visually? Don't they look farther back now? Let's get some of that white pigment ink over that cloud. Watch how billowy and soft this cloud looks. I just added all over those clouds up in the top. You can do this when you retain a little bit of white somewhere in your scene. If it all gets coated in here with colors and everything like that, it kind of looks out of place, because what you're saying with white pigment ink here is you're saying that that white light is illuminating this mist in the air, you know, fog, haze, or whatever. Okay, now let's add some of it down here. And you're doing this very, very lightly, okay? See, watch this. I'm kind of hitting it in one area, and then I'm moving, okay? And then you get that nice fog. Don't do this, this, and this, like blob, blob, blob. You kind of add it down, and I'm doing it very lightly. I'm barely touching the page like that. See that? And you're creeping it over. The good thing about this technique is that the pigment ink dries a little bit more see-through, so it'll dry darker than what it looks like right here. And see these textures down here? I mean, I think they look okay, but they get a little bit busy, so I'll put some of this white down in there just to soften up those textures in the light areas, okay? Light, airy, and misty, and soft looking, okay? Most of the times what we're doing in stamping, you know, we're looking for crisp impressions, crisp applications of colors. That's all great. Everything looks nice and sharp and defined, but this little bit of haze in here, contrasting against the sharpness of the non, you know, coated, covered, I should say, pieces in a little bit of thin white pigment ink makes those areas seem a little bit softer. So these areas over here seem a little bit crisper when you have an area that has a softer light on them right next to them. So, all right, so that is your colored pencil approach right there. You know, in this video, I mean, you can see the difference between these two, but there's not too much of a difference, you know? It's kind of interesting, huh? Colored pencil and markers. And it's because I'm using them in the same kind of way, you know, light to dark, you know, out here. So you can do that with, you know, with really whatever media you're working with, just to make it kind of a really controlled process. And I don't know, you know, careful is not a word, you know, the ideal word, but I guess it's a little bit careful when you're working with something just incrementally a little bit darker and a little bit darker with every change in color. I'm going a little bit darker on my perimeter right here. But see, even when you change to a much darker pencil or something like that, you can use a nice light touch with it. All right, colored pencils at the Lakeside Cove. A little soft and kind of airy, I guess. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.